Today we'll be taking a look-see-back-see at my favorite spring crafts of 2025, so let's get started with project number 1. For this project, I have this cutting board. I think it was gifted to me. It's one that looks like from Hobby Lobby, and it's about 7 inches in width. And then the length is about 16.5 inches or so, not including the handle. I'm going to cut that handle off. And then I want to make some bunny ears here. I'm also going to use these wonky carrots. It comes in like a trio with some flowers from craftingwithkimber.com. I'll have a link down below. So what I've done is I've created just an ear pattern. And that's what I'm going to use with my jigsaw to cut it out. And then I'm making a line across because I want to make it straight there. And then here I am using my jigsaw. Handle comes off first. I saw this bunny ears shaped cutting board on like Pinterest, and I'm like, well, I can do that. And yes, you'll have a free printable. It's like a set of 4 printables for this project today. One sheet will have like these bunny ears on them, so if you want to kind of do the same thing, and then you've got 3 kind of different designs. It's all the same wording to work with, but some with and without an image in the center of the design. So just kind of finishing cutting out. It actually made it nice and easy this way to work with the vinyl material. Now, if you don't have a Cricut machine, I mean, you can print the PDF out, and then you can buy some of that, cheap vinyl from Dollar Tree, and then use that to trace it onto that vinyl and then cut it out by hand, and that way it'll stick onto your cutting board if you want to try this, or just trace the PDF out and then do it that way. But this kind of made it easy, and it helped me to stay along the lines. And I was surprised this cutting board wasn't too hard to cut, because I didn't know if it was going to be really hard wood or not. Then once I'm done, what I did on the edges up here is I just kind of cut them at an angle, and now I am smoothing them, obviously with sandpaper. I'm rounding it out, and then of course sanding everything else off just to make it look all nice and smooth. And you could totally just leave it like this if you wanted, but I thought it would be cute to add a little bit more design to it, that kind of thing. So I'll finish this up and then meet you back inside. Here we are. It's all ready to go. All right, so what I'm going to do is just take some DixieBelle chalk paint in the color Drop Cloth, and I'm going to add a little bit here in the ears and then a little bit down the center. You all know I like to do this. It's just a way to add a little bit of color, but not like paint the whole thing. Of course, you can paint the whole thing if you want. And then outside, I will sand and distress it off. Now, the ears look a little funny to me before we get our stuff on there, but you'll see in the end it starts looking good. So I have these carrots, like I said, craftingwithkimber.com. Before I paint anything, I want to trace the carrot, and then I come in about 1/8 of an inch and I redraw that pattern perimeter, and then that's what I'm going to cut out. And I do the same thing for the leaf top. All right. I love that these carrots have like that extra little leaf top to go on top, because it really makes them 3D. And as I said, it comes with this, I'm sorry, I can't remember how many carrots, and then some flowers and stuff with it. So here's what it looks like cut out a little bit short, so you can see that wood perimeter around. Now I'm going to take some DixieBelle chalk paint in the color Terracotta, and I'm going to paint the bottom of the carrot, and then the leaves, I've just got this green, it looks like horrible, if you look to the left, curdled paint. That's how it comes. But it paints on really smooth. It's the weirdest paint. Got it down at the local Ace Hardware store, but it works great. It's just a sage green color. And of course, like I said, just painting the bottom portion of the carrot with Bella in the terracotta. And then you could just go to this aspect of it, distress around the edges, and then leave the carrot. Okay? Now the free printables, I have a carrot on the inside of the design, and then I also have a bunny shape, if you didn't have anything wood shape or to use. I also just didn't want to leave it painted, so I took my papers to my sewing machine and I sewed around them to give them a little bit of a nice kind of country feel. And then I'm taking my scissor blades and I'm scraping along the edges of the paper to kind of roughen it up a little bit, and then we'll glue each of these paper pieces to the top. But again, you could just paint it, or you could paper it, or you could do both like I'm doing. And then we'll get the green leaf stuff glued on top. Lost my train of thought here. And then it makes a cute little carrot in the end. This is a 1/2 inch wood. I don't think I said that. So here's where my ears look a little funny, but it'll all start to come together in a minute. Okay, because I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't want that white up there. Here is one part of the free printable I'm giving you. Then there's 2 more pages, one with a little carrot in the center, just a black silhouette carrot, and then one with a bunny in the center, again just a black silhouette bunny. I'm choosing to use the version without anything on it so that I could put that wood carrot in the center, of course. Now I do know that Dollar Tree has those packages of like 5 carrots that are decent size, or bunny shapes or egg shapes, whatever that could work in the center here if you wanted it that way. You could also take this and just print it out onto some scrapbook paper or cardstock and glue that to the top of your cutting board, however you would like to do it. So now I'm just gluing my carrot down in the center, of course, and I wanted to add some splatters, as I usually do, because you all know I think it kind of brings the whole project together. I'm starting with some orange on the carrot and then just a little bit around it. I don't want it all over the board, because then I think once I come in and start adding the black splatters, it could look a little Halloweeny, and that's not our intention here. We want to make it a little bit spring, so I keep the black splatters around, you know, the design and then up into the ears a little bit. That makes this project complete. What do you think? Let's move into project number 2. For this project, I have a sweet subscriber in my Facebook group, and she posted this picture and asked if I could come up with something. So we're going to see what we can do. It's not going to look as shabby chic as this, but I think it turns out pretty cute. So I don't have a free pattern for you because this is really easy. It's a couple of circles and a rectangle. And the way we're going to work this project is I'm going to use a lot of fabrics, and I don't want to like scare anybody like, nope, that's too advanced for me. So we're going to go back and forth between kind of a demo project that's a lot simpler with fabrics and one that's a little bit more with more fabrics, okay? So hopefully you can bear with me as we jump back and forth between the 2 projects so that, you know, everybody is included. So first thing we're going to start out with your first pattern piece, 1 circle 7 inches in diameter. You're going to cut 2 pieces of fabric, and then you can cut an optional piece of batting if you'd like. The second pattern, another circle, which is an old pattern from a Santa hat, is why it says that, is 10 3/4 inches in diameter. You could just make it 11. You're going to cut 2 and an optional piece of batting if you'd like. The last pattern is a rectangle, all right? You're going to cut 1 or 2 as I do. It's 21 inches in length and 8 inches in height. It's actually 20 inches when you're done, but you have this extra inch of seam allowance. We'll go through that a little bit later. So here's all these fabrics I'm going to use. A lot of them came from like Hobby Lobby. Some of them are thrift store. This one in particular is like an old quilt I'm cutting up, so that's an option for you. Old quilts, machine quilt. This is a pillow cover, a pillow sham I found at Goodwill, and I'm cutting it up because I really, really love the texture on it. So these are, I'm just showing you this so it's things to think about when you're selecting fabrics. This is from Hobby Lobby, I think. This little corduroy is from Hobby Lobby. This is, I know from Hobby Lobby, is their fall section. This is a placemat. I'm using this because, again, I love the texture of the fabrics. So think about that when you're using fabrics. This is batting. You can get at Walmart. You can either buy it in a bag or cut by the yard if you want to use batting, or there's this batting. I get this off of eBay. It's like 1 inch thick, and I usually will split it in half. I will have that link down below for you. It's all cotton batting. This is what I'm going to use. Let's look at some ears. We're just going into what we're using here. Now, these ears actually came off of this little topiary, this spring clearance topiary. I'm going to use them. I saved them. But if you don't have that, you just take a piece of wire. I'd probably go with about 18 gauge and then just form it into an ear, twist at the bottom. You know, you'll cut off your excess, of course, and then you can bend the bottom so that it will in there, so it'll go on our hat, and you make 2 of those. There's your ear. So my fabric, I actually used a pattern that was on the ears. I took it off. So you end up with the piece that wraps around the front, the little piece that goes in the inner ear, and then the piece that goes on the back. So here's what I, tore off. Basically, you're going to cut the shape of the ear, but you're going to add an extra inch, okay? The shape of your wire ear, and then an extra inch. And let me show you how it fit on. It basically wrapped around like this. This, like I said, was what was on there. Okay, then you're going to cut a second shape, and that again is going to be the shape of the ear, because that's going to go on the back side here to cover all that mess. All right, and then you'll cut a third shape that's probably maybe a 1/2 inch smaller in diameter of the shape of the ear that'll fit in the center. Okay, here we go. Let's start on our hat. So we're going to start with mine first. I'm working on the larger circle. I've cut one piece and then I cut another piece of that same fabric, not quite half, let's say a quarter. And then this one I cut about 3/4. And I left about an inch extra here so that you could sew or glue the two top pieces together. Okay, so you want to make sure you add a little extra to one piece. All right. Okay, so let's layer this. All right, I've got my bottom piece. I'm adding that big thick batting here, moving Boston out of the way. Add my one piece on top of that 1/4 piece, and then the 3/4 piece on top of that. And that's how mine is going to be assembled, the main one we're working on. Now, if you want it a little bit simpler, pretend you have, your 2 full circles down below. You want 2 full circles, and then just cut like a little half moon shape or something like that for a patch on top, just like that, nice and easy, and you can sew around it or glue it on there. So here's your 2 pieces. Let's say no batting on this. All right, let's make it easy, and your half moon shape is what I'm going to call it. Again, sew or glue around it. Now for the top piece, I'm going to layer. I've got my bottom piece, I've got my batting, remember we're going back and forth here, and I've got my little 1/4 piece and then my 3/4 piece at the top. That's how my top's going to get layered. If you want it simpler, you got your 2 pieces on the bottom and your little half moon shape, and you can glue or sew that together. For the main portion of the hat, I've got 2 pieces of fabric here, and I made the one on the left a little bit bigger, remember, so we could sew or glue it together so it forms one piece. And then I will close it, and then I'll have to sew or glue the other side together, so essentially we have a tube when we're done. If you want it nice and easy, just cut one piece of fabric that size, and you're going to kind of fold it over like this, and then fold that portion over, and then you could, glue or sew it together on that seam. That's it. You don't have to piece anything together. So here I am, I'm back on the main one, and I'm just sewing my 2 pieces together on one side here. I love that placemat because I love the little fringe on the end. So here I've got it, but I want to add something more to it. Here's where you can get as involved as you want with fabrics. I'm going to make it easy, but I want to add like a little square patch here. And you can do the same thing if you just want to do it simple with one piece of fabric like this, just a little square patch. All right, and then I've sewn that on, and I want to add a secondary patch. Okay, and then I sewed around that one. The other one we're leaving with just one patch. We're not doing anything, okay? Sewed a couple fabrics on here, made some patches. All right, now I want to bring it together and sew it, and I'll do that off camera. I'm going to just sew along that open seam again so we have a tube, okay? And of course, if you're a gluer, you can glue this together. All right, so if you want it more simple, I've sewn that one patch on. That's all we're doing. We're sewing that one single patch. We're trying to make it simple, and then you just fold it over however you want to do it and sew or glue that together. Okay, you can see here my nice crooked sew line, but it is sewn together. Now what you want to do, we're going to stay on this more simple hat. You've got a little patch in the top if you want, sewn or glued on there, and here I am, sewed it off camera. We're going to take this and we're going to pin it edge to edge inside the top of the hat. We want the edge of that circle pinned to the edge of the top of the tube. Line those edges up, and you can glue or sew. I'm thinking if you glue it, maybe you want to pin it, but put your pins really far apart like this, and then like glue in sections, all right? And then you can add another pin really far apart over here, and then glue that next section, or you can just try to glue it all together at once, but I thought this way might be a little more helpful if you're a gluer and keeping those edges together. Bella's coming to help. Or if you're a sewer, just pin it all like this, and we'll sew it later, and you can sew it on the top side or the bottom side, okay? So here's my hat. We have to get this together. I'm patching the top, right? So I'm going to pin it together here, and then I sewed it off camera there, just one line down there, just so it's all in one piece. And then we're going to layer it just like the bottom. I'm going to just kind of spot glue it here, or if you're a gluer, glue it all together. All those pieces, batting, top piece, bottom piece, whatever you want. And then if you're a sewer, you can go ahead and sew off camera. I'm going to sew about an inch in because I'm going to leave room for the second sewing. So here you can see it's sewn about an inch in. And now I'm going to pin it to this hat, just like I showed you on the other one. I'm pinning the edge of the circle to the edge of our tube is what I'm going to call it. And here I am all pinned, and we can either sew it from the top edge or from the tube side, I guess. So remember this one, it's pinned, ready to go. Let's take this to the sewing machine so you can see it a little bit easier without any batting in it or anything. I'm sewing it from the tube side so that I can move that tube back and forth to keep any of the wrinkles out of it. Of course, if you're a gluer, you don't have to worry about this part. I just want to show it, okay? Here we are coming to the end. And now we have our hat together. I went ahead and sewed mine off camera since we just seen it sewn on the other one. You can see my crookedy sew lines. I meant to go like a little bit of ways from the first sew line when I sewed the top portion of the hat together, but it kind of interspersed, and that's okay. Okay, hope I'm not giving you like whiplash here, but let's jump back to the more simple pattern. We're on the brim now. If you're a gluer, you're going to glue your two pieces together. All right, you can glue all in the center and everything, and then you can add your little patch here, glue that on. But if you're a sewer, you want to sew your little patch on first to the top layer of fabric only, and then sew your two pieces together. All right, here I am all sewn. We're going to attach the rest of our hat to this bottom piece. All right, but first we want to stuff it because we want to make that inner portion all nice and stiff so it stands upright. And then I fold that raw edge down about an inch. Okay, you can see that here. Just fold it down about an inch. This is how I do it. It's easier for me. And then I go just a couple inches apart and I make slits in that folded down area. Okay, making my slits. And you can do this however it works for you. And then I add glue to that area where it's all slit, where it's all cut. All right, and then you can just fold it over onto. Once you get all your glue down there, fold those cut edges inward so that it will kind of glue to that batting. Is that understandable? I'll show a little more detail on mine. And then add glue to your batting. I don't think I show it on here, but I do show it on the main one, the one I'm more working on, because this is just kind of a real quick demo. It's not going to look pretty. Okay, so you've got all your glue on there. Those are all folded in so that when we add it to our brim, it looks all nice and pretty underneath, okay? Maybe not so pretty, but it'll get covered up. All right, let's move to the main portion here. I've got all my layers together, and I'm going to sew the first top of the fabric here together, those two pieces together. All right, and then I layered my bottom piece, my batting, the sewn top piece, and now I'm sewing around the perimeter. I go about an inch in because I just like how that looks and kind of makes all those edges pop up, I guess. Now we want to, again, like we did the more simpler hat, we want to stuff this nice and tight. All right, and now I'm folding down that raw edge about an inch. Okay, and then we're going to make cuts in it a couple inches apart. And I do this a little different way, the way I glue here. And of course, I'll show you because you can do it either way. But this one I end up doing different. I'm adding glue to a couple of pieces at a time so that I can overlap them a little bit better. Like this. I am realizing as I overlap, this placemat material is kind of thick, so I start adding in straight pins while that sets up. But do you see how I'm really overlapping them? It's going to give us a lot more cleaner edge than how we just did really quick on the demo. So I wanted to make sure I showed this. Overlap them really nice where it's cut so that it'll give us, like I said, that nice clean edge. And then I'm going to add glue once all that's all set up, add glue there, and you can see I've added a lot of glue in on the batting part or the stuffing, and then I'm going to lay it down and let it set up all nice. And see, it's a lot cleaner look when we take our time. And again, that will all get covered up anyway if it's, not real clean looking down there. All right, so let's go back to this hat, the more simpler one. I'm going to just do a little bit here, and then we're going to really move on to the other one. I've ripped about a 2-inch strip of fabric, and I'm going to put this at the bottom of our tube and onto the brim a little bit. So like I said, it covers up that little area where the tube meets the brim. Okay, and I know someone's going to tell me what the tube is really called, but I'm calling it a tube. All right, this is what that looks like. All right, and we'll add a bow here because that's going to cover it up, but let's go for our ears first. So let's actually assemble one, right? I just kind of showed you. I'm going to glue this to the center, or you can sew it. I've sewn it here. I glued a little spot glue and then sewed it. And now I'm adding glue onto the wire frame we made, and I'm going to put it onto the back of that piece. And I'm going to add a little bit of glue at the top of the point first and then fold it down. All right, and then I'll add glue to the around the rest of the perimeter, and again at the sides of that top where it's folded down. See, there and there, so that then I can fold the sides over, and you're just going to go all the way around, folding that inward. My Fabri-Tac glue doesn't quite want to stay down as well because it takes a little bit to set up, but it works great. You can see it popping back up. But then you're going to put that other little piece on the back so it covers up all that folded area. And now you've got two ears here, and you could bend them and everything how you want to do it. And then you'll just glue both of those ears on the wire, just kind of right up and tuck it right up underneath that tube. All right? And again, that'll get kind of covered up. And then with that same material, you can rip another strip, you can, make a bow out of it, you can glue it on wherever you want to glue it on, and then you could add some cute, like carrots and stuff from Dollar Tree. They have all sorts of different kind of carrots. Now, I know we didn't really finish this hat all together, but I just wanted you to see the difference on how cute it could look with just 2 or 3 fabrics versus the 10 that I'm using. But I didn't want anyone to feel like they couldn't do this project or feel intimidated because I was using 30,000 fabrics, okay? All right, let's move on and finish the main hat here. So originally I was going to do that oranger fabric in the center, but I decided to go with this fabric from Dollar Tree to kind of add a little fluff. Again, I like the texture. I'm going to sew it on and then do it just like we did the other ear off camera so it's ready for you. And I changed it to that color because I wanted to use this kind of really pretty orange plaid fabric. I got it from Jubilee Fabrics. I'll have a link in my description box. Again, ripped about a 2-inch strip. I sewed around the perimeter of it just so, adds a little something. But again, laying it at the bottom of the tube and onto the brim a little bit so you can see what it looks like here. Looks nice. And all our sewing with our patches and our different fabrics. I love how this hat turned out. I really hope you guys like both versions, even though we jumped around quite a bit. Here are my ears all the way done, and I'm just going to glue them into position, again, underneath kind of that fabric and under the tube a little bit. And then what I did is I had to kind of bend the ears inward a little bit here so that I could glue it to the hat. Otherwise, they kept flopping forward. So you might find you need to do that if you, whatever hat you make. You can see how it's kind of bent there, but I think that gives it personality. And then I'm going to go ahead and just glue my other piece of ripped fabric that I, put into a bow right down there so it covers the wire, anything like that. And then these carrots came from Dollar Tree. I thought it matched my little orange plaid fabric nice. I'm pulling off that top using this. It's a placemat that I got at a thrift store, and I'm just cutting, little 1/2-inch slits all the way down, leaving about 1 inch. I don't cut all the way through. I leave about 1 inch at the bottom, and then I can just start to glue and roll it up. It's about 2 inches tall, about 4 inches long, each little top here. I cut a little bit off, roll it up, and glue it together. So hopefully that's understandable. It's probably easier to watch than what I said. And then I'm going to add a little glue at this wire and I'm going to poke it right in. Don't worry, it'll be cuter. I've got 2 done. We're not going to leave it there. Now I'm taking just some twine. You can see 1 done there, and I'm wrapping it at the bottom of that greenery so it hides all of that. I kind of double wrap it there, make it a little bit thick. Cut off the excess, glue it down, and then I make a bow out of the remaining piece of twine there, just twine from Dollar Tree, and I'll glue that little bow on here. Cute, right? And then I'm going to glue both carrots down. I just glue them down to the side. I was going to glue one on each side. Decided, no, I'm just going to glue them all on the right side. So I kind of glue one down and back behind the bow a little bit, and then one kind of up. And it'll stick together really well too, because that bottle brush, it just, you push it together and it sticks together. Anyway, here's what that looks like. That makes this project complete. Let's take a look at the comparison. So the one on the right is the one that we were all hoping I could lindify, and the one on the left is the one that I did. I don't know. What do you think? Would you make this project? It's time for project number 3. Now for this project, our pieces mostly all came from Dollar Tree. These wood pieces here for a base, this thick wood piece, this candle. The dowel is those 2-pack dowels, the bigger size. I actually have to switch to a longer piece, about 12 inches. And the bunny came from Walmart. It's under $5. So those of you with the Dollar Tree Plus section, I just wanted my bunny white versus green. That's all our Dollar Tree had. I'm going to use DixieBelle chalk paint in the color drop cloth, but before I start painting, I want to trace my thick wood circle and then my circle for the base. I was just going to paint this, and then I decided I wanted to add a little something more, so I'm going to add paper to the project here. And then I am even going to cover around the candle. As you can see, I'm kind of having to like roll it with the paper to trace around those curved edges. It works out pretty good. You'll see how it looks, but you know, this is the way I'm doing it. And then on both pieces, I just show you a little bit here, actually all pieces. I come in about 1/4 of an inch and I redraw the perimeter of the margin I originally traced. I'll cut that out so that as you see all our paper pieces and they're glued to our wood pieces and our candle, you'll at least be able to see a little perimeter of everything. I'll cut this kind of to here, and then I'm going to just kind of sort of fold it over a little bit to finish the wave along the top. It's more than I need to go around the candle, but I want to have a little excess. And then the straight edge on my paper cutter, I'm going to cut off a little bit, again, so it's short around the candle. We see a little bit of candle perimeter. I'm going to come in first with antique wax mixed with water, do a little staining first. Again, my dowel piece, this was too short. I don't know what my brain was thinking. I went with about a 12-inch piece. Once all our stain is dry, then I'll come in with that DixieBelle chalk paint in the color drop cloth and go around the top and sides and bottom, and there you go. All right, here I am. I come in for about 2 coats, all right, just to kind of cover that up. That way when I come in here to distress a little bit later, you'll see a little bit of that brown stain kind of pop through because the wood is kind of too light. And why am I distressing if I can't really see the wood underneath if I'm going to paint it? Now, you could totally just paint your pieces, completely paint. Obviously, as you know, you do not have to add any paper products. And in the candles and things like that, you can get all sorts of beautiful colored candles just to sit on top. You don't have to use what I'm using, you know, Dollar Tree operated battery operated candle. Now I'm just taking my paper pieces and I'm bringing them to my sewing machine so I could sew around them to give it a little bit of that country farmhouse look. There's no rhyme or reason to this. I'm not using any special needle or anything like that. In this machine, it's a size 14 that I'm using. I'm just sewing like regular fabric. My old machine, I had to use a size 9 or 10. You decide if you want to try sewing on some paper. And then once that's complete, I'm coming in with 120 grit sandpaper here and just doing a little bit of sanding. Not too much. I don't want it to look really, really distressed. I just want it to look lightly distressed. I'm still here. Finish up the dowel a little bit. The rest I got done off camera. I did distress that one big wood circle a little too much, so I went back and repainted a little bit. Now I've got some chalk ink here, colors that kind of, you know, a nice light tan color to kind of add some shading around the circles because that paper's kind of browns and creams. And then once those are, you know, inked and shaded around the edge, I'm using the open end of my scissor blades to scrape along it to kind of give it a roughened look, to give it that kind of farmhouse appeal. Then I'm coming in on the pink and I'm shading around it as well. This is all completely optional. And then again, I will come in with my scissor blades and scrape around it. See, it kind of gives it a little bit of a silhouette. It'll kind of help the paper to kind of pop off and look dimensional off of the pieces that they are laying on. Then I'm coming in with some of the same color paint, added some water to it using my fan brush. I'll add some splatter to my paper pieces. That gives it just a little bit more dimension onto our project. I love doing this. Y'all that have been with me for a while, you know I'm going to pretty much do it on 90% of everything. And then I'm just going to start gluing a couple things down. I'm only going to add one circle to the very top piece of the thick wood. The other pieces are going to stay for right now. And then I will go ahead and glue down the wrap that goes around the candle. I really wished they have those new ones in that's in like the really pretty kind of colored clear jars, the battery operated candles, but I already had this in my stash, so that's what I'm going with. Now the bunny, I actually like the ribbon that's on it and everything. I'm just going to just slightly dress it up a little bit. I have like a velvet flower and some crochet flower, a velvet butterfly and some crochet flowers and paper flowers from my stash, and we're just going to kind of add it around the ribbon. We're just going to keep the bunny looking all cute. But yes, you could totally do this with the green bunnies at Dollar Tree and stuff, but like, and they do have white bunnies, different colors, but they're like kind of glittery looking, and I didn't want that either. So I'll get my pieces glued on here, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so here's my bigger dowel. What I want to do is push my dowel so it goes through the top of the bunny down to the bottom of the bunny. And I have one of these things. I never remember what they're called, and I always ask what they're called, and one of you always tells me, and then I forget. But I'm using it because it's got a nice point on it to get down through the bunny. I'm probably about an inch back from the ribbon. And then, of course, I'm just going to go all the way through till it comes out the bottom. Now, my dowel is actually a 1/2 inch size diameter. This is about a 3/8 inch. I wanted it smaller so that my dowel, as I wind it down through the hole here, you can see it poking out the bottom there. It'll come through a lot more here in a minute. The dowel will be nice and tight through that styrofoam, okay? Because I don't want to glue it in, because we all know when we add glue to the styrofoam, it pretty much melts. So I made the hole smaller. You can see I'm really pushing there. You can see the strength on my hands, and out through the bottom. It'll kind of make a mess at the bottom as larger chunks come out here, but don't worry, all of that's going to be covered up. And it only needs to come out for me about a 1/4 inch. Now I'm using the 1/2 inch drill thingy here, and I'm coming down into the bottom base of the wood, which is why I didn't add the paper. And I'm just going down just enough so that the dowel, this is just a dowel, a little scrap piece, make sure it fits. And then I'm coming to the underneath side of that thick wood piece that's on top, that's going to be on top, making that a little bit deeper, again, using my little scrap piece of dowel to make sure that fits tight. Now I'm laying my papers on, and I'm kind of pushing around the drilled holes so it'll indent it. And then I'm just going to cut a tiny little hole, and I'm going to do that for both pieces, and then I'll glue the paper on. And then when we go to push, there's Boston, told you she was coming up. When we go to push the dowel into those tiny holes, that paper, of course, will sink in and give us a nice margin around that dowel without looking like it's a cut edge. Do you know what I'm saying? All right, so both of those here, and now we're going to start gluing everything on. I really think this turned out super cute, and I'd like to make two, but I need a tall standing bunny. I either have one too short or too tall. I'm using a brayer here to kind of, smooth the paper on so there's no bubbles or anything like that. And then I'll just kind of push the dowel that's in the bunny into those little holes so we get those all prepped, all right? And I'm going to use this quick hold glue, because I was going to use wood glue, but this is going to work just fine. But see, it's nice in there, and see the margins, how they go nice around the wood, the paper margins around the wood. And then I'll just push my bunny down into place so everything's all ready to go. And then I'll do the same to the top wood. I'm going to push that dowel in so I get that paper right down in where it needs to be, have everything all looking smooth, make sure the dowel still fits good, that kind of thing. The paper going into the inside of the hole will also give it a little bit of a tighter fit, so that's going to be nice. And then we'll just start adding our glue here. I'm adding really good into the hole and then onto the dowel a little bit. And then I'm going to even add some onto the bunny. I do add a little bit around the perimeter, but in places that you're not going to see, of course, because this glue really runs out. All right, get that on, and then I'll do the top. I'll flip my bunny over to do the top because I don't want this glue to run out the hole. And then it sets in 10 minutes but cures in 24 hours. Add your little candle, sorta, and that makes this project complete. It's time for project number 4. For this project, I'm going to use this bunny from Dollar Tree, but I personally, it's hideous. So I'm going to remove the bow and everything off of it, all that kind of glitter that took a while, that drove me nuts, but I got all that glitter off, by golly. And then I am going to kind of, sand it up a little bit to give it a little bit more of a rough texture. It was actually pretty easy to remove the glitter, but glitter was like everywhere, of course. So you can kind of see it in the upper corner. It's all, sanded. What I'm doing is taking some Debbie's Design Diary DIY White Swan chalk paint, mixing some baking soda into it, just a little amount of baking soda for this first go round, just to give it a little more thickness and texture. And like I said, the sanding, this bunny is so smooth, I wanted it to have texture, okay? And then, of course, adding in the paint with a little bit of baking soda gives us a little bit more. But I'm just doing a really thin coat front and back the first time around. I'll let it dry, and then I'll come back in. I'll mix a new batch of paint with a lot more baking soda to make it even more thicker, and then I'll come in on that second coat using a foam brush and kind of pounce up and down, and that will give it like a soft kind of powdery texture versus brush strokes with a paintbrush. But on this first coat, I don't care. So here it is. I've skipped ahead a little bit. Obviously, it's looking a lot better. This project really is just all about the painting and stuff. We don't do a whole lot to it, but it so changes it up, and I wanted to share that with you. You can kind of see that texture right there, that kind of pouncy texture. I love that, but do it how you want to do it. It's just what I like. You can see it again. I kind of froze it for you, get you a little bit of that view there. Now I'm coming in with Debbie's Design Diary White Wax and DixieBelle Dixie Dirt in Earth, which is just a powder. And in order to do kind of this powder technique, you need to come on with the white wax. So it's going to kind of brighten up our bunny a little bit, but it's got to be that wax so that it's kind of wet to bring in this dirt. Now this Dixie Dirt, I thought was going to kind of be a brown tone. It actually looks brown in the bottle, but kind of comes out grayish, but that's okay because it kind of gives it a farmhouse texture. And I'm using this makeup brush from Dollar Tree to kind of brush it on. And normally when you use this dirt, you want it to go into indents of your project, like an ornate frame. You want it to stick into the cracks and stuff like that, make it look a little decrepit and worn. But we don't have any of that. We have embossed sections. The flowers are raised up. It's embossed. Now, if they were debossed, indents, then we get more what we want. But this is still going to kind of do what I want. But you got to kind of go back and forth. So once I get that, dirt on there, then I come in with, a brush and I really just kind of blend it in. And now I'm coming to the other side. I'm putting the wax on again, getting, so that's nice and wet again. I'll come in with that makeup brush and that dirt and I'll rub it in the areas. And then I'm going to come in here with a different paintbrush again and blend it in. And you could leave it at this point, but I want to bring it back to the rustic look. Okay. We've kind of got our farmhouse. I want to bring it back to the rustic look. So now I'm going to come in and use, it's 120 grit sandpaper. Now you can sand it just till the kind of white wax pops back up, or you can come back in like I'm doing here and get that metal to pop back up. And just keep sanding over those embossed areas around the edges. And you just kind of go back and forth. You might have to come back in with more of this, dusty dirt. You might have to come back in with some more wax, and you just go back and forth till you get it how you want it. And I'm just going to do the one side because the other side's already done. But once I get those embossed areas kind of down to the metal, then I'll kind of sand around the edges just to bring up a little bit of the white wax up through that kind of dirt, okay, that Dixie Dirt. I'll have a link down below for the white wax and the Dixie Dirt. I mean, if you want to try this, I think it so looks different. I'm using a little spatula here. I'm scraping around the leg so it allows the leg to kind of pop out from the body, and now you can see what it looks like. I love it. Here's the other side. I still have to do a little more sanding around the edges, but I think it looks great. I'm going to bring in the original bunny because I've got two. What a difference, right? And all we did was painting, a little wax, a little bit of that Dixie Dirt, and I love it. And that's how easy this project is. I am going to kind of bend the ears a little bit, give them a little dimension, and you'll see kind of what that looks like between this bunny and the other bunny. See, that looks much better, right? So I like that. And then we're just going to add a little simple decoration. Now I'm adding, this is some ribbon I got from Walmart. And I really love how that looks because you really focus on the detail of the bunny. But I kind of want to either maybe add a little butterfly Or maybe I'll come in with some like crochet flowers. I know I'm going to get lots of different answers, but what do you guys think? Flowers, butterfly, or just leave the ribbon? I don't know. So I'll kind of take the consensus. For now, I'm going to stop with the ribbon. And once I kind of glue it in place and wrinkle and crinkle, that makes this project complete. Up next, project number 5. For this project, this is our inspiration. We're going to make a cute carrot garland. I almost slightly sort of remember this might be from Antique Farmhouse. So these are the things I'm going to bring in. I got this at a thrift store. It's got like 10 of them in it. The little banner pieces are already made for me. I'm just going to use 5 though. That way I have 5 for another little cute garland. I'm going to use, this is like a placemat picked up at a thrift store. Give us a little texture. These are dinner napkins, again, at a thrift store. I love the orange color. I'm going to bring in some batting as well. Optional. And then some of this ribbon that I got at Walmart like last year. Now, I did make a free printable for you. I printed it onto some fabric. If you'll remember, this is the fabric I used in one of the last projects. That's why these are on here. But I'm just going to cut these up individually for our carrots on our garland. Link to my blog in the description box if you want to print that up. And I just printed it onto fabric. All right, and there'll be a link there to a video too if you want to watch a quick video on how you can print onto fabric using your inkjet or laser printer. Now, if you don't have any garland already made pieces, you can use this burlap material from Dollar Tree. And if you want to stiffen it a little bit more, any kind of stiffener, but I love this Beacon stiffen stuff. It is awesome. I ordered it online. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just cutting, they're probably about 3x5 pieces to fit the front of my banners to put my carrots on, so it gives it a little bit of a background. It'll kind of look like this, as you can see. And then I'm just, some of them were already frayed, but some of them I'm taking, you know, the tops of the fabrics off and kind of giving it a little bit of fray edge at the top, and then just cutting out the last few. Only need 5. All right, and then my batting, I just stuck a couple pieces together. I'm going to layer my dinner napkin, fold it on top. I just free-handed a little carrot. And I'm doing 2 pieces of batting and folded my dinner napkin so that I could cut out 2 carrots at once. That's the only reason I did it like that. But yeah, this color orange is just beautiful. I originally got this orange for fall time, of course, to make cute little pumpkins. But then when I saw the carrot banner, I'm like, cute color for carrots. All right, cutting out the last one here, although it'll give me 6 carrots and I only need 5, but there you go. Perfect. All right, now I'm going to place the carrots on like this just so you can see what it's going to look like. You do not have to have a backing. I just thought it would kind of pull the carrots up off of that banner piece. And then I'm going to start cutting my ribbon about 5 inches in length. I'm going to cut 5 of them, of course. Right, one more. And we're going to use this for our carrot top. Now, I know it's really wide ribbon. I started to cut this and I thought, oh, I need to let you know how wide the ribbon is. And it's about 2.5 inches wide. And what I'm going to do is cut it into 3 strips of about 3/4 inches. And this is how we're going to, you know, make our carrot top. It's going to be really cute. I'm leaving the wire in because it is wire edge ribbon. And it is stiff enough it's going to hold its shape. And so, of course, you're going to have 3 for each carrot. Now, you can glue this, of course, or sew it. If you're a gluer and you put a backing on, glue that down. If you use batting, glue that to your carrot, or just glue your carrot down. But when you do, only glue like the bottom half of the carrot. Leave the top half open because we want to slide our greenery in there. And all I'm doing, see, I'm just folding each piece in half. I'm going to kind of overlap the 2 edge pieces, fold the middle one in just like that. Just make a cute little bouquet. And then if you're a gluer, just glue all that together. And then the top half you left open, then you can glue it all down with your carrot top right in the center like that. Perfectly cute. If you're a sewer, you know, there's 2 options. You can either do this so that your sewing's not seen on the back. You go sew around this. Then you can add your carrot top, sew across, add your carrots, sew, and then glue it down. That's what I'm going to do to keep my back all nice and clean. But if you're not worried about that, you know, on the back side, you don't care if your sewing is seen or anything like that. You can just sew that down right onto it. Same process, sew across the top of your carrot top a little bit, and then sew your carrot in. You'll just see that little bit on the back, but that's okay. Do how you want to do it, right? All right, and I'm going to go ahead. I decided you don't really see it a whole lot, but I'm going to just sew around each little carrot top here. I need to stop calling it a carrot top because then I say carrot top and then carrot, and it's too many carrots in a row. And now I'm just sewing all my little pieces here. Yeah, the thread I use is kind of a darker brown. It's real subtle, but, you know, I sewed it, but you don't have to sew it. But if you like to add these little details, definitely you can sew on it. Sewing around my kind of little background piece here. Perfect. And then I'll add my carrot tops. I'll do it, you know, keeping the wire on both ends so that dark green is along both edges and then the one in the center, depending on which ribbon you use. And then I'm just going to sew right across it. I go about 3 times. I kind of go forward and back stitch and then forward again. And I think that's plenty to hold this in. And then, of course, adding my carrot right over the top and then just sewing about a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. A little bit of that batting, you know, is going to see, you know, peeking out around the edges of the carrot, stuff like that, especially because the dinner napkin moves a little bit. But that's okay. I like it. I think it gives us something. And here's what that's going to look like. And we're going to do all 5 this way. All right, so here they are all completed, looking super, super cute, I think. And this is just so quick and easy. Now what I'm going to do is cut my words apart here. And the printable has it with that space between it if you want to do it this way. Just cutting into little strips so it just looks like little, you know, signs across each of the carrots. And of course says farm fresh carrots for sale, 25 cents each. All right, if you're a gluer and you use batting, you can glue it together, or whether or not you use batting, and then you can glue it onto your carrot. All right, just like that. I'm going to sew around each of them, of course. I did that off camera, and now I'm just going to go ahead and get these into position. Not that you cared, but to the left, they're kind of slanted, you know, the left side down. The middle is straight, and to the right, they're slanted with the right side down because I'm just that way. There's no excuse for it. All right, going ahead and getting these glued down. Super cute. I think it adds a lot of detail. And then, of course, we want to glue our whole little carrot ensemble to our banner pieces. Last one. I think it's the carrot top that just does it for me. And now I'm making little bows just out of some Dollar Tree twine, just tiny little bows we're going to add to the top of our carrot at the bottom of the greenery, of course. And then I have 5 little wooden buttons here. They're all a little bit different. And I just added some thin twine through the holes of the wooden buttons on all of them. Cut off the excess on the back side. And then, of course, we'll just start gluing the bow right into position. Like this. These are optional, of course, but I think it adds a little something more. And then, of course, gluing the button to the middle of the bow. What a windstorm we are having today. No rain, just high mile-an-hour winds. That's what happens when you live on the coast. All right, these are all done. Now I'm going to take, this is thick twine I get at Walmart, and then some beads I picked up last year at Hobby Lobby. $5.99, these great big beads, and then they were 40% off. And what I'm going to do is feed 2 beads and then a banner piece, 2 beads and then the banner piece, and so on all the way across. And I'm going to feed the twine through from the back to the front. It's probably easier to look at of each of the banner pieces because I want that little bit of twine to be seen on the front of the banner. So like this instead of the other way around, right? Understandable? And then when I space these, I'm not going to space it yet, but when I space these, I'm going to try and space it so there's about 2.5 inches. That's just kind of my go-to between banner pieces. But I'm not going to do it yet till I get the last of the beads on because I am going to put beads, you know, before and after each beginning and ending banner. Get the beads on here. And then I'm going to measure out about 11 inches of twine. All right? And then the end of that twine's going to meet at that 11-inch mark, and then I'm going to tie just a little knot to have a little loop. And I'll do the same thing on the other side because I want my loops to be the same size. So now I'm going to start measuring it from the knot to the first banner piece, 2.5 inches. Then of course move my beads, next banner piece. So between the two, 2.5 inches. And I'm going to do that of course all the way across. So when I get to the last one, I'll measure 2.5 inches here. And then from that mark, perfect, I'm going to measure out 11 inches on my ruler, again, because I like my loops to be the same size. Again, that's just the way I am. And then, of course, I'll make my little knot. I will check with the other side to make sure it's the same size. I think this is cute. It's really quick and easy, especially if you just want to glue it together. And with 5, I mean, they'll be cute to hang anywhere. Look at that, same size. That makes this project complete. Let's take a look at the comparison. Mine's at the top, the other one's at the bottom. Which one do you like best? If you're still with me, give me a carrot or a bunny emoji. We're on to project number 6. You betcha, more fabrics, but this is really fun. So a lot of these fabrics came from a thrift store. This one's a pillow sham. Another one is a pillow sham, came from Goodwill. Love the texture of them. This one was really hard to cut into. It's a real beautiful table runner, but I did cut into it. And I will have a free pattern for you. We're going to make carrots out of hearts. Again, not my idea. This is a Lindified dupe. I don't know why I never even thought to put the before and after pictures, but you know, whatever, we're going with it. But thank you to whoever thought of this craft. Thank you for the inspiration. On the greenery of this heart, optional, but you'll cut down the center about 1 inch. I'll show you that when we get in there. And of course, I'm going to use some batting. Again, optional. All right. These are so quick and easy. Probably took 30 minutes to do all 3. I'm going to use this leftover quote that we used in the last project because I had a bunch of them printed out, and I'm just going to take the biggest one and cut it into 3 parts for our 3 carrots we're going to be doing. All right, so I cut this pillow sham 2 pieces, 2 pieces of batting. All right, you'll lay the batting on the inside, of course. And then I've got the greenery cut. I didn't cut extra batting for this one. Here you can see I cut down the middle because it's such thick fabric, so I left it by itself. Here's the other orange fabric, and then 2 pieces of batting. And this one I don't show you, but there's 1 piece of batting in the center. We're going to go ahead and cut down about 1 inch here. All right, and that's so you can like fold it over or bunch it, or, if you wanted a single, leaf, something like that. And then I'm going to use some of this placemat again, just like the last project. And I've just got a couple little strips here, 1 piece of batting, and then our little quote all cut up. So it'll kind of look like this on all 3 of our carrots. All right, here's the other one. My first carrot's already done, so that's why I'm not showing it. And then I've got some of this fall ribbon from Hobby Lobby, but it's the perfect color for our carrots today. All right, so if you're a gluer and you use batting, you're going to glue the batting to each piece of your fabric separately. Then you're going to put it together, all right, pretty sides out, and then you're just going to glue around the perimeter between the 2. Leave, a little couple of inches opening and finish gluing together. If you're sewer, you're going to do the same process, leaving an opening. And then again, on your leaf, there's my 1 piece of batting there. You're going to glue it all together if you're a gluer, whether or not you use batting. And if you're sewer, I split it apart here and then kind of went around that center and sewed as well. And then gluer for your tags or sew around it. So here we are, just going to kind of skip through each of the process of sewing all of these together. But yeah, when you're at like thrift stores, look for pillow shams and things like that because they're usually a lot less expensive than buying hard to find like old quilts to cut up, things like that. And I usually like to, if I buy quilts, they're machine quilts, so I don't feel bad about cutting those up and stuff. And that's why I love looking for like pillow shams and stuff like that because you can find so many different textures, and then you don't have to have like a lot of closet space for all these big quilts. You know what I'm saying? So, and even a tablecloth or a table runner such as this, but it was so pretty in the texture. But anyway, You can use regular fabric if you'd like. All right, getting through all our hearts and our leaves here and our tags. Getting those also. Now here's this one all done. Now you could like overlap it and glue or sew like this. You can just kind of bunch it together in the middle. I'm going to kind of do combo of both. I'm going to overlap and bunch. All right, still glue or sew. I'm going to kind of turn it on its side like this, and I'm going to just sew right down that, little spot there, nice and easy to hold it together. Right, this is what that looks like. Okay, now once our, heart carrots are ready to go, we're just going to stuff them as full as we want. Get that all in there. I know, don't you want to just like put your fingers through Bella's little belly there? Don't see a head, but we got her fuzzy belly. Now when you're done stuffing, glue or sew them closed. Now we got our leaf here. I'm going to like glue it a little bit more overlap. This part of the greenery fits just beautifully in that little like recess there because of the way we stuffed it. So I'm just going to glue it right in there. And then some of my leaves I turn to the left, some are a little bit more center, that kind of thing. You can put them in there however you want. I'm going to overlap this a little bit more and of course glue that into the little recess right in the center of our heart carrot, whatever you want to call it. Make a couple of bows out of our orange plaid ribbon here. And we're just going to glue that right at the bottom of that greenery there. We want to hide that little, edge there. So get that glued in. And then when we add our little tags and glue those in. And then I've got some buttons here with twine through them. I just got to cut off the excess twine. I'll do that off camera. But once we glue our little tags in that center, glue our little button on top, that hides the bottom of that, ugly part of the greenery. And it makes these carrots, carrot hearts, let's just call them carrots now, makes them look so adorable. And then when I'm done, of course, I have a set of 3 fresh carrots, 25 cents. Don't you just love these? That makes this project complete. Let's go right on into project number 7. So those of you that know me, you're probably going to freak out. You might need to sit down. I'm using 2 fabrics only and some batting. That's it for this project. Probably if you saw the thumbnail, you thought you were going to do all this quilting, right? Fooled ya. I have a pillow sham here. I got it at the thrift store. Love it. Love the colors. I love the kind of white embroidery in the middle. So I thought this would be great. I'll fold it in half. It'll make the bottom of our project, of course. It'll give me just enough for 2 pieces, front and back. And then I'm going to use this crinkly fabric I got at Hobby Lobby. That's going to make the top of our project. And for the top only, I'm going to use some batting since this top piece isn't any kind of quilted, fabric or anything like that. I will have a pattern for you. We're going to do this gigantic egg that's 21.5 inches long and about 14 inches at its widest width. I will have a pattern for you on my blog. It'll come in 4 pieces. Each pattern is the whole length of 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So print those out, cut them, tape them together, and you will have your egg pattern. So for my fabric, I kind of want to do this like 2/3 one fabric and then 1/3 another fabric. You can do half and half if you want, but I kind of like the 2/3 third. So the bottom half is going to be about 11.5 inches. And then the top's going to be, to start, about 10 inches, but we're going to change that. So I'm just going to fold my pattern for the bottom portion, how tall I want that to be, and then I'm going to pin it onto my pillow sham and cut that out. Now you can of course use any fabrics you want. It doesn't have to be quilted or anything like that, okay? So that was the easiest for me, just however long I wanted the bottom portion to be, just fold my pattern in half, pin it to my fabric, and then cut it out. And then once I get that cut out, of course I will cut that in half. I got to take the little things off the back because, cut that off and then cut this. Now I've got my 2 pieces for the bottom. All right, now the top is about 10 inches left, right? But we need to actually add about another inch for gluing or sewing, right? So that when we put the two pieces together, we'll get our 21.5 inches or so of egg that we originally started with. If you only do 10 inches, then your egg's going to be smaller. And that's okay. That can totally be work. If you don't want to, worry about adding that extra inch, that's perfectly fine. So I will readjust and refold my original pattern piece to add that extra inch, and then we'll go to work on our top fabric. Now my top fabric's pretty thin, so I'm going to use 2 pieces for the front, 2 for the back, and then a piece, 1 piece each of the batting for front and back. So I'm cutting my fabric out first. Again, it's thin, so I've got 2 pieces of this crinkly for the front, 2 pieces for the back, and then a piece of batting for each side. All right, and since I have 2 pieces, I'm going to layer a piece of batting in between. If you've got thicker fabric, you can just layer your fabric on top of your batting, right? You don't have to worry about a piece underneath, of fabric underneath. And then if you're a gluer or a sewer, you can go ahead, you can kind of spot glue it together if you're a sewer. But if you're a gluer and you're using batting, glue it all together, all right? If you're not, then don't worry about that part. And then what you're going to do is place your top egg and your bottom egg together, right sides together, pretty sides together, so that your edges are all flat across the top. And then you're going to glue in between the 2 pieces of fabric. And then when you open it up, you've got this nice, pretty finished off edge, right? And you'll do that on both pieces. If you're a sewer, you're going to sew. You're going to layer 2 pieces together, and you're going to sew along that one straight edge. That way, when you open it up, you got a nice, pretty edge in the front of your egg, right? So here I am just sewing both my 2/3 and 1/3 egg together. I love how this turned out. I actually cut out fabric to make another one. All right, so here both the pieces are, if you're with me, they are glued or sewn together. Now what we're going to do is we're going to lay wrong sides together, our 2 egg halves together. And if you're a gluer, you're going to glue in between the 2 fabrics all the way around, but you're going to leave about 4 or 5 inches opening for stuffing, okay? And if you're a sewer, you're going to sew all the way around anywhere you want. Leaving that opening for stuffing is what I want to say. If you're gluer or sewer, you can leave that opening anywhere you want on your egg. So here I am, of course, just now sewing my egg together, and I'll leave about that 4 or 5 inch opening. But yeah, I loved how this turned out, and I had this other pillow sham I got at the thrift store in different colors, so I'm going to make one more. I just think these turned out, they are so simple and easy, and looks like we did a lot of work, but we didn't. All right, here's your opening. Now you're going to just start stuffing your egg, and you're going to just stuff it as full as you want. And if you don't want an egg this big, adjust your pattern size. Not a big deal. Or don't use the pattern and draw your own egg. You might want a different shape. Once you've got this stuffed, glue or sew it together. But yeah, you might want a different shape than this. Mine's tall and skinny and narrow. You might want more of a fatter, full egg and shorter. That's okay. You do you and make it beautiful. Now I'm taking some 120 grit sandpaper, and I am just distressing along the edges of the fabrics and or the batting that's in there to make it all look frayed and worn and beautiful. I like how that looks. You can skip this part if you don't want to do that. Doing this just makes me think of like those rag quilts. So I often like to kind of, distress the fabric, especially when we leave the edges out. Now what we're going to do is I have this banner. We used it in a garland a couple of, videos ago, carrot garland, and I just cut one down a little bit smaller. All right, and then I have this bunny. I got these images off Etsy. They're, I think, on sale right now. Even if they aren't, they're only just a few dollars, and you get like 16 images. And I added a little stamping to it. So I have this Distress Oxide ink and gathered twigs. It actually kind of has a little bit of a green shade, and this script stamp, which I don't think you can find anymore. It's old. But I just dunk a little bit into the corner of stamp into the ink and press it on just like that. You can see that there. And then, of course, around the rest of it, how I've done that previously. And I just think it adds a little more vintage feel to it. Now, as you see, I am peeling this off of paper. This is just a muslin material that I printed on. If you're new to my channel, you haven't done this technique before, there's a little 4-minute video. I'll have a link underneath all the printables and patterns. It shows you how to print on a fabric and just printing it out on your inkjet or laser printer. Now I'm going to add a little batting behind it. This is a little placemat. I picked up these at a thrift store. I'm going to add that behind it. You can add as many fabrics as you want. And if you're a gluer, you can just glue all your images and fabrics together. I'm a sewer. I'm going to sew around it. I'll do that off camera. I'll show you what that looks like here in just a little bit. But now we're going to move on to adding some trim to our egg. I'm using these crochet trims from Dollar Tree. It's $1. They're both a little bit different, but look similar because it's $1.25, but you only get 3 feet, and it really doesn't go that far. I don't think they give you enough ribbon for the price, honestly, but crochet trim can tend to be a little more expensive. So I wrap the one around it, and then the other I've got in a bow here, so I'll adjust my tails to as long as I want. And now here is my image I've sewed around it, the placemat as well as the burlap part. And then I have this carrot. It's from craftingwithkimber.com. I punched a couple of holes in it with my crocodile to make it look like a button. And then I have some vintage floral trim here. I'm going to cut it a little bit in just a minute. And first I'm going to distress my little carrot button first. And then I'm going to add some twine through the holes and just tie it off in a knot on the back so it makes it look like we, sewed our button onto our bow. And then we'll go ahead and get our crochet trim glued on around our egg. I'll turn it over here in just a second and we'll glue the backside too, so make sure everything stays in place. I think this crochet trim just matches very nicely. You can use whatever trims or ribbons you want. And then I'm going to figure out where I want my little bunny bow ensemble here. And I'll glue just the little top portion of the bunny itself on there and then glue the bow down. I don't show gluing the bow down, but it's glued down there. And then I'm going to trim my floral trim to the length I want. And then I'm just going to kind of glue it into places around the bow and kind of crinkle it a little bit so it looks 3D. I've already kind of crinkled the tails and glued those into place as well, the tails of the bow. So all that looks a little bit 3D. And then we'll go ahead and glue our little fake carrot button on. And that makes this cute egg project look quilted and complete. Woohoo! Project number 8. Let's go over some product to start we'll be using. I'm going to be using this wood egg from Dollar Tree. I'm going to use these wood planks, just 2 out of the package or any thin wood you've got. I'm going to use some of this beautiful jelly ribbon, of course, any jelly ribbon or ribbon you want. A wood heart, Dollar Tree has wood hearts you can use. I'm going to use this fabric from Dollar Tree. I'm also going to be using this placemat. You can use whatever, fabric you want. And I'm going to use batting. That, of course, is optional as well. Now, to start out with, I do have a free pattern for you. Link to my blog in the description box to find this pattern. This head, all I did was trace the egg. So if you have wood and want to cut out with your jigsaw, you can. Or, of course, you can use foam board or cardboard and cut that out as well. I'll also have 2 ears here, of course. 2 nose options. Of course, I'm using the wood heart, but if you're cutting this out of cardboard or whatever, you'll want the pattern, right? And then this is like the inner portion of the head to use with fabric in the inner ear portions. Also with fabric, although we're using fabric on everything. So there you go. So this is the fabric I've cut out. All right, and this is actually the head number 2 because it's smaller around, as you'll see when I lay this on here. So all the number 2 pieces are smaller around, okay? Now this is actually fabric, I forgot to tell you, this is fabric from this clothing item I bought because I only have 1 roll of that fabric left and I need it for my next video. So, all right, that said, let's move on to these wood planks here. I'm just going to trace my ears on these. Now these are ears number 1. Right, the first page. And then, oh, and I forgot to tell you, I actually am going to cut out a couple pieces of batting for this, but I've already got 1 cut out. We'll get back to that. I've already got my batting, 1 piece of batting, and that fabric for the ear. I think that's called boucle fabric because it's not a Sherpa, so correct me if I'm wrong. Now, the inner ear, I've got the pink already cut out. You can see how that fits nicely on the inside. And you've got that little outer edge of the white showing. And then I've got my little piece cut for the heart. So you can cut any fabric for that if you want. You could just paint the hearts if you want. It doesn't matter. I just wanted a little texture on the nose. So all I did with this, I just kind of drew it on the wood planks there. I drew it near the edge because I'm just going to use my jigsaw and cut off the excess, and then I'm going to shape it with my sander. All right, now we're going into DixieBelle chalk paint, the color Drop Cloth. I'm going to be using on all my pieces. I will cut all that off camera because it's nothing exciting to look at. But I do want to say, whether or not you're using wood for the main bunny head, you could use cardboard or foam board or whatever for the ears, for the hearts, however you want to do that. Okay, so that's just an option for you. Right, just continuing up the painting here. Oh, and I will add in another heart. I'll show you that in just a minute. I probably really didn't need to paint the centers of everything because it's covered up, but you know, I did anyway. Heart. I wasn't going to do the back side. I was just going to kind of paint it and leave it. But then I decided, no, I'll put fabric on the back and, you know, do a cute little heart or a bigger heart for the bunny tail. You, of course, could use a pom-pom there if you want. So I brought in another heart. Now I'm just going to distress everything. It's mainly, I mean, a lot of the smaller pieces, you don't really see the distressing. You see it more on this piece because the inner core of this wood is a little bit darker. You know, when you have light wood and you put light paint on it, you don't see a lot of distressing, but I know I did it, right? All right, so if you're a gluer, whether or not you use batting, you can start out already and you can go ahead and glue your batting and or fabric to your top piece. If you're a sewer, here soon I'm going to sew around it and then glue it on. With your ears, again, if you're a gluer, whether or not you use batting, you can go ahead and attach those pieces to your ear. Glue your batting together, glue your ears on, glue your inner ear on. And you can see that nice ring around it, you know, around the pink. See that nice little ring? It shows right around that pink, so that's nice. Now, if I'm a sewer, I'm going to sew around on the white fabric, on the pink fabric, and then I'm going to glue it down. Here's my bigger heart piece here. Gluers, you can go ahead and glue that down. I'm going to sew around it. I want to add that texture, and as well as the little heart, which is our nose. You can glue down your fabric or sew it and then glue it down. Or if you're not going to use fabric on those heart pieces, just paint it. All right. I cut another piece for the back. I'm not using batting on the back. So if you're a gluer, you can glue that down and then you can glue whatever you're going to use for the tail on the back. Now the front side, I cut a piece of that boucle for the back, and I'm going to show you in a minute what I've done to it. It's in one whole piece now. I'm not going to use batting on the back. It's just fabric. So your front piece, if you use batting, has batting, your outer ear, your inner ear, and the back side has just the outer ear of fabric only, okay? And I'll show you why. I'm going to adjust it in a minute. I'm going to actually cut part of it off, and I'll show you why in a minute. Of course, here I am just, you know, doing a little sewing. Like I said, I'm sewing on the white part of the outer ear, and then I'll sew on the pink part of the inner ear just to give it that texture. And then I'm sewing around my hearts here. And whether or not you're a sewer, you might not want fabric and stuff on your hearts, you know. It's just, you do you. I'm just giving you inspiration. I feel like I go back and forth. If you don't like this, do this. If you don't like this, do this. But hopefully I'm helpful and not confusing. All right, so everything's sewn. Here's my front piece, okay? I'm just laying it on here for a minute. Let's discuss the ears. You can see at the bottom, I've marked the ears right here. So, and then I went ahead and sewed my ear pieces, and I cut them off the area where I marked. I don't want that much, and I'll show you why in a minute, okay? Hopefully it's not confusing, probably easier to watch. You're going to want to cut part of that off because what I'm doing is we're laying our ears underneath our fabric, okay? So what I did, I'm going to put my ears at a slant. You might want them straight up. Put them where I want it, and I marked it off the back of the ears, all right? And then I'm going to mark on the front side. I'm going to mark around both sets of ears, okay? Now, this batting, I remember I said I had one piece of batting. I'm going to actually cut 2 more pieces of batting, all right? And the reason I'm doing this, because when we place the ears down and then we have fabric on top of them, let me show you right here. And then if we only use one piece of batting on this, when we lay it and glue it down, you're going to get this big old bunch where the ear is. And we want to make everything level underneath our main bunny fabric so that it matches the height of the ear, okay? Now what I'm doing here, where I marked it in pencil, I'm just marking it in a Sharpie marker so that I can lay my extra 2 pieces of batting on top and see my line underneath, and then I can cut that out to fit that area where my ears are going to lay. We don't want to lay that over the ears because then that's going to make the ears even taller, right? So the ears are going to fit inside that area that you cut out, okay? And I'm going to get those pieces glued on to the batting that's already there. So I've already sewed around the main piece, and then I'm going to glue my tops of my ears on, both pieces, and then that piece on the back, when we glue that on, you know, the part down below where we don't have any fabric, why I didn't put fabric there is so that we attach our ears to the wood piece. It doesn't have that bulky of the fabric on the back side. We're attaching wood to wood, and it'll be easier to see here in just a minute, but that's why I cut those short. You don't have to, but I did. All right? Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. We're going to just start getting all our pieces glued on, my, you know, tail here, the nose, all that kind of stuff, getting everything ready so that we can start to assemble. But before we start to assemble, we need to get some eyes on. So I've laid my nose down just kind of where I want it, and I've marked where I want my eyes. I want them just kind of right close to the nose, a little bit slanted. I think it's cute. You could just add little paint there, however you want. You don't have to add beads. I'm going to use this crochet string and a needle. You could use regular thread. I'm going to come through the back side and pull the needle through, and then I'm going to add 1 bead on here, and then I'm going to pull it all the way up, all the string up till the knot hits the back of that fabric, and then I'm going to come right close next to where I came out at, not back through the same hole, right close, and then pull it tight, and then I'm going to come again from the back side where I marked it, bring my needle all the way through till my thread is not going to come any further. All right, add another bead, and then I'm going to go from the front to the back, right close to the same hole I came out at, and then pull it all the way through. The beads, I got them at Walmart. They come in like a package of 4 different sizes for around $4 or $5. And I'm going to pull my thread on the back side really tight. If you can see here, it kind of sinks those beads in. It's just preference. And then I'm kind of holding it with my fingers so my thread doesn't loosen back up there, and I'm just tying it in a knot to tie it off. Now, once I do that, my beads are in place. If you don't want to sew your beads on, glue them on. If you know how to make French knots with crochet thread, make cute little French knots. However you want to do it. All right, let's start gluing our ears on. See where this is bare wood here? The thickness is not there because we don't have any fabric, and that way it's not going to impede anything when we go to lay these down in the spot we marked. And then I'm going to just add glue on the ears, on the wood, on the front piece, and I'm going to lay everything down over the top. And then I'm going to just start to kind of, you know, squish it down where I sewed, you know, just to kind of make it look a little more bubbly. I'm going to just kind of push down around the edges of where I sewed. And now I'm gluing the back side on, and then I'm going to glue the little heart on. Right, and then I'm going to glue the little nose on where I want. But before we do that, I want to make some whiskers. So I'm going to bring in that crochet thread again. I'm cutting basically probably about 8-inch length pieces, 2 pieces per set, let's say. All right, about 8-inch length. And then I'll take 2 pieces, the first set, kind of fold it in half. And then I'm just going to make a little knot at one end. And these will be too long. I will trim them off. I think I trim them off camera, but just making a little knot there, just like that. Okay, you can see they're pretty long. They're about 1 inch long. Better to have too much than not enough, right? Same thing with the other 2-piece set. I'm going to tie a little knot on one end, and then I'm going to lay them down in the middle, kind of overlap where those loops are. Fan out my little whiskers. Get them how I want it. Make sure everything lays good, and then I'm just going to glue that thread down in the middle. I'm just going to glue right underneath it to lay those down, and then we'll glue our nose down right on top. Okay, and you know what? I was just thinking about it while we're gluing our nose down. I think on the back side I did end up using a piece of batting. I think my eyes just saw that. I didn't think I did. I think I used a piece of batting with that fabric to cover the back of the bunny as well, but you don't need batting if you don't want. Now I'm using this Distress Oxide ink and warm lipstick with a little ink dauber, and I'm just making some little round cheeks. You can skip that or not skip that, or use paint, watered down paint if you want. And now I'm just The left side is glued. I just kind of made my whiskers a little wiggly. You know, the shape I wanted, they're already cut down. I cut them so the length was right to the edge of that wood piece, and then I'm just gluing each whisker down. Nice and easy. Okay, and then I'm adding a tiny little, probably 1/2 inch piece right underneath the nose. I'll glue that down as well if you want that little piece there. And now I've got some black paint mixed with water, and I'm adding some splatters with Bella right next to me. You don't need to, but I think it just gives it a little bit of personality. Yeah, I'm not going to lie, Bella got a few splatters, but thank goodness it's water-based paint, right? Just a wet paper towel, and I got those off. Shh. Don't tell anybody. All right, now I'm using this plaid ribbon I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I've already tied it into a bow. It was actually $4.99. You get 4 yards, but then it was like 40% off when I bought it, so not terrible. And then a white crochet flower and a couple of little pink flowers. I was going to use leaves and do a whole bunch there, but anything I put up there just kind of took away from the bunny itself. So I thought, you know what, just a bow and a couple of flowers. I even debated on using flowers. I was like, I kind of just like the bow. I don't know. It took me like ½ hour to decide what I wanted here. In the end, you can see what I ended up with. Once I glue these flowers on, that makes this project complete. We're headed around the last turn into project number 9. Now, I know we have all seen the fake chocolate bunny, but I wanted to take it up just a little bit of a notch, right? Just pump it up a little bit. And so this is the bunny I picked up at Walmart. I actually love it because all the lines and stuff around it and around the legs, all the seams you can see, cost about $8. It's going to be perfect for looking like a fake chocolate bunny. And then I found this at a thrift store. You know, looked like a little scallop cute basket. You could use any basket. All right, we'll paint that in a minute. I'm going to use this satin Rust-Oleum paint called Espresso, I think. I'm not one for satin or, you know, glossy or anything like that, but for, you know, this type of project, it worked perfectly. There's all sorts of shades of browns for, you know, chocolate shades you could use. I like this one the best. I just did really light coats, like a couple of light coats, let it dry for a few minutes, come back in for some more light coats versus heavy coats. All right, it kind of just did it better. And this is what it looks like. Again, look at the lines, and it made it perfect, like it was chocolate put together. All right, so let's work on the basket. I'm going to come in and just do a nice coat, kind of a, you know, a coat and a half. I didn't want to go 2 coats, but kind of like a coat and a half. Once this is dry, I'm going to go in and just distress it. But if you have, you know, like just a regular cute little basket or something like that you could use for this, this project could be simply all you have to do is paint a bunny. But, you know, I'm going to come in because I wanted to paint up, you know, a cute little wood basket. I'm using these DIY chalk paints in Apothecary and Petticoat. I already have eggs, but I'm going to just pump them up a little bit, kind of vamp up the color, kind of 4 big ones and then 3 little ones. And plus I wanted a little less splatter, but I wanted them to be a little bit more muted, but brighter colors, if you know what I mean, because these are chalk paints. So, you know, it kind of just brightens them up, but they still stay that nice kind of soft, chalky finish. And then I'll re-add some splatters. Nobody laugh at what I use to hold my egg while I splatter. I think it's pretty genius. 2 coats on each one, just kind of letting them air dry. And while those air dry, we're going to work with this beautiful ribbon from Dollar Tree. It was pretty wide to go around the neck, so I actually am going to like fold it in half to go around, and then I'm going to just glue my bow right on top. I'm trying not to glue to the rabbit itself because any kind, you know, glue or like that, it's just going to kind of melt that paint. I didn't put a sealant on it. If you're going to have your rabbit out in the open, you might want to seal, but I'm going to cover ours up so I didn't, worry about putting a sealer on it. So here's my ribbon folded in half. I still think it looks fine, glued to itself, not on the bunny. And then I'm going to glue down, especially using this Fabri-Tac glue, it would just melt that paint, and then glue down the bow on there. Perfectly cute. You could leave it like that. And here's my thing for doing the splatter on the eggs, because I need to splatter and be able to turn it and be able to tap my fan brush and splatter. It's funny looking, but I think it works. It's genius because it's kind of hard to hold it and then try to splatter, right, with the way I splatter. I'm going to do all my eggs this way. I'm just showing one. And now I'm bringing out some of the cellophane, again from Dollar Tree. I've got these really sticky foam tabs you can buy in the hardware section at Dollar Tree because I want to of course, stick it down. There's on the bottom of the bunny, there's a little rubber pad, so that's where I stuck the foam dots to or whatever, but I want to make sure it stays stable and not try to tip over in our little wood basket. And I'm just going to use some brown shred. Again, this paper shred came from Dollar Tree. They didn't have any fun Easter colors, but that's okay because it's going to allow the bunny and the eggs and stuff to kind of, shine up. All right, so here's my eggs. I am gluing them down even though it's just on paper because I want to be able to glue them so that the eggs don't move and then, they flip over something and the little holes where the sticks were when I was painting them get seen. So that's why I'm just kind of adding a tiny bit of glue and then gluing them into position. And that's all I want to put in there because I really want the bunny to be seen, but I thought it could use a little bit of color to help kind of tie the bow in. And now I'm going to turn this around, so I can pull up my cellophane here. What I like to do is kind of grab it at the back, pinching it, and then kind of pinch the front to it and pulling the sides up at the same time, of course. I just do a little bit here because it takes me a bit. Get it where I want it. Pulling it up little by little. And what I'm trying to do when I ruffle it, I am going to use a zip tie. We'll cover that up because it's quick than trying to tie a bow one-handed. As when I do the ruffles, I'll show you here in a minute, I try to keep the pleats as much away from the front as possible so you can really see the bunny. You don't just see these pleats of plastic wrap. And then the rest of the pleats are mostly on the back side. So I really tried to kind of pull on it so that the pleats would be a little more unpleated. Does that make sense? And then I'm just kind of gathering it up on the sides. I'm using a clear tape so that you don't see it. If you use those satin tapes, you're going to see the tape there. And now I'm taking some sheer ribbon from Dollar Tree, wrapping it a couple of times around the zip tie to hide it. I chose sheer ribbon because I didn't want anything that was really like in your face, but I thought it needed a ribbon. I was going to do crinkly ribbon like you do when you wrap something in cellophane, but I wanted the bunny to be kind of the first thing you see when you look at this. And then off camera, I took some spray adhesive and like a little Q-tip, and I used that to kind of crinkle the ribbon down the side of the cellophane. I started with a little test spot of glue, and you could see like the glue through the shears. So the spray adhesive worked best. So that makes this project complete. Mine, of course, is on the left. I couldn't find anything all over Pinterest of a DIY in a basket like mine. So the comparison on the right really isn't much of a comparison, but what the heck, it's a chocolate bunny. Which one do you like best? We've jumped the last hurdle to project number 10. For this project, I'm going to be using more of this boucle fabric. This is our friend today, and I love that Dollar Tree carries it, although ours has been out for a while now. I bought up every color they had, and it's almost gone. And I'm using this machine sewn quilt. I get these off like Amazon or eBay around $40. It's really thin type quilt. They're nice, and I just cut them up. And of course, I'm going to use some batting. That is optional, as I always say. You can pick this up at Walmart by that bag or by the yard. You can have it cut by the yard. Okay, so here's my quilt here, and this is about 19 inches long by about 14. Okay, you can make whatever size you want. It's ready to go. I love it. It's quilted. It has design on it, so I love it. Okay, so again, a pattern for you. It comes in 2 pieces. You've got the bottom and the top, and you're just going to cut it and then tape it together at the dash lines to get your bunny head pattern. All right, and then I have another pattern for you. I almost made 2 pillows, but I didn't. You got they're bows, all right? So you've got the boy, a bow tie for the boy in case you want to make a set, 3 pieces, all right? And you're going to, the top piece you're going to like tape together at the arrows, and then the girl bow, all right? And all these pieces. There we go. So here again is my fabric. Again, I use that clothing material I cut up because I only have that 1 roll, and I'm using 2 pieces of batting behind that, okay? Yeah, I need that roll for my next video, which is coming out very soon. Hint, hint, hint. You know what that means. Wednesday. Anyway, so, and it's just like it. It's just a little bit thicker. Here's my bow pieces. I cut 2 pieces of batting. All right. And then, of course, a piece of fabric. Now, I cut mine separate. You could cut your piece out in 1 piece and tape it together at the arrows like it shows on the pattern. All right, but I just cut it separate. I've got the little tails. I've got 1 piece of fabric and 2 pieces of batting for those, and those will sit kind of right up underneath. And then, of course, for the center of our little bow, 2 pieces of batting and the fabric. Again, your batting is optional. All right, this is what it's going to look like. All right, so I'm going to place my bunny about 1.5 inches from the top and bottom edge. And I believe it's about 2 inches or so side to side. If you're a gluer, all right, you can go ahead whether or not use batting. If you use batting, glue your battings together. Glue it to your, fabric, and then glue your whole piece down. If you don't, just glue fabric down if you don't want to use batting. All right, you can go ahead and glue that down. Now for your bow, you can go ahead and glue your batting if you use it to your bow pieces, but you're not going to glue this top part down yet. We have to start with the tails first, all right, because that's the most lowest under piece, right? So glue your batting on if you're using it or not, and then glue your tails down into position, all right? And then you can come in and glue your main bow on and your center, all right? I'm a sewer, so I'm going to sew my bunny and batting to the first piece of our pillow only, okay? And then I'm going to show you something here on the bow. We'll get to that in a minute when we go to get everything, the bow assembled onto our pillow here, and that's obviously for you gluers as well, especially if you're going to use batting. If you're not going to use batting, you don't need to worry about what I'm going to show you. All right? Yeah, this would be so cute to make a boy and a girl. Yeah, because you could do, you might not have the boucle fabric, but, you could do regular fabric for the boy and have it be in a boy color, and they got a bow tie, and then I just think it would be adorable. Anyway, I just made the girl because I was doing a lot of projects this week, so you get 1 pillow only to watch. Video's long enough. I had to slow some things down to explain some stuff, so I'm sure you're glad, we're only doing 1 pillow here. All right, here's what it looks like. Okay, it's ready to go. And you can see the back looks really nice. You can see the sewing pattern I did just around the face and the ears. And yeah, here's where I'm checking at. I'm about 2 inches from the top, and where I'm going to start sewing down my tails. I want to make sure that they are 2 inches from the top, and they will actually probably be about 2 inches side to side. So I'm just getting them situated here. Just center your pieces. That's what I'm going to tell you. And now I'm spot gluing my batting on and my fabric so that they don't move, and then I can take those to the sewing machine. Like here, I'll just show sewing 1 and then sewing around it. I love to sew these on because it just kind of helps them poof up a little bit, so to speak. But if I didn't have a sewing machine or whatever, or wasn't a sewer, gluing them on is going to look just as cute. And if you are a gluer but you love to hand stitch, you could add some hand stitches in there just to give it a little bit of personality and a little bit of design if you want. So that's always an option. All right, so here's my tails sewn on. I don't care that the batting kind of leaks out around my pieces because I think that's cute. All right, so we need to lay our top pieces on. Here's what I alluded to earlier, just hinting about. So when we lay these on, see how it pushes into the center, because it's a tallness from the bunny down to the bow. So I actually cut a few pieces of batting like 3, I think, just to fill that space in. So when I lay the top bow pieces on, that will lay level across the top, okay? And this is probably going to be more so if you're using batting underneath all your pieces, because it's going to make all your fabrics all raise up. If you're just kind of gluing fabric down itself onto, or sewing fabric only onto your main piece, you're probably not going to need to, you know, take up space to layer all these pieces. So I'm just spot gluing my bow stuff together with all the batting and everything like that. And then of course I will take it to the sewing machine and, you know, sew around them. And I hope what I explained about that is understandable. So you're probably only going to want to fill in that space if you're using batting. If you're not, you're probably not going to have to worry about it. All right. Okay, so here's my bow pieces on top of that. And now what I'm going to do is add in my centerpiece. Okay, just gluing down the batting here, spot gluing. I may have added, I almost think I did a couple pieces underneath those circles. Again, batting, filling in the space. And then sewed that on off camera. And then here's what everything looks like. I'm going to kind of poof up the bow and everything, but it looks totally cute. And now we're going to get our main pillow together, okay? So if you're a gluer, you're going to come along the edge between the two fabrics. You're going to go about 3 3/4 the way around, and about at hand width opening you're going to leave for stuffing. If you're a sewer, of course, we're going to do that same exact thing. All right, so here I am sewing everything down. And if you don't have quilting for the back or anything like that, just use regular fabric. It's all good. I just like to use the quilting and stuff like that. You know, I've been watching a lot of people on Instagram and stuff, and they take old quilts and reuse and sew all these fun things. And I just kind of got into that last year, and I really like that look. It's just that country farmhouse look. I love it. And so that's what I'm going with. But you use whatever fabrics and things that you desire. I'm just here, as I said in the last project, I'm just here for inspiration for you. All right? So I'm going to go down to about where I've got double pinned. I always double pin right here so I know, hey, stop, full stop here. Got it sewn all the way around and my opening, and then I'm just going to start stuffing it. And I like to stuff my pillows really tight. And with this size pillow, I probably use almost a whole pillow from Walmart. I buy those $3.44 pillows, Walmart full queen size pillows, because it's cheaper than buying stuffing in the crafting section. Runs, you know, under $4. So once you're done stuffing, glue or sew it closed. So there you go. There's my idea. If you don't know about that, buy pillows for stuffing. Now I'm taking my sanding paper and I want to really roughen up those edges. It's a quick way to do it, and I'm just sanding along the edges of my quilt to really get that distressing. And then of course once I do that, that makes this project complete. So I hope you enjoyed our look-see-backsy at my favorite spring crafts from 2025. Don't worry, we'll have another video of my favorite Easter crafts coming up soon. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below and let me know which project was your favorite that maybe you forgot all about that you watched last year, or maybe you didn't forget about it, but you just haven't got to it yet. If you walked in here for the first time, you're just checking things out, you're digging what you saw, make sure before you click off, you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on another video from me. Now, before I go, I'm going to leave you with one final thought. Aligning your faith with God's promises is not about creating a new reality. It's about declaring what He's already established in you. It's about what God has promised in His Word to help you live out the best life possible with the guidance that He gives you. It's about expressing your trust in Him so that it helps uplift you and sees you through whatever you face in life. Making a declaration can give you an unshakable foundation as you affirm what you believe within the hope that He is giving you. So with unyielding faith, unshakable hope, and abiding trust, know it to be true. And as you hear these next words, declare them to your heart and mind that Jesus is your way, your truth, and your life. Jesus, when I can't figure it out myself, you are my answer. You are my encourager. You are my supporter, and you are my guide. Jesus, by faith, you make me whole. In the Bible, the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, for we walk by faith, not by sight, living our lives in a manner consistent with our confident belief in God's promises. Jesus, I rely on your power rather than my own human strength. Within our relationship, you bring a safe and steadfast hope to my heart. You bring confidence when life is difficult, and you bring the promise that I am never alone. The book of Hebrews chapter 6, verse 19a in the Bible. This hope, this confident assurance that we have an anchor of the soul, it cannot slip and it cannot break down under whatever pressure bears upon it. Jesus, I trust in your timing. When things seem unclear, you bring an ultimate plan, even if I can't see immediate results. You are in control and you are faithful. I rest in your ability to handle it all. I stand up with belief that you are always good, always loving, always just, and always reliable. The book of Psalms, chapter 27:15. Wait for and confidently expect the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for and confidently expect the Lord. And the last declaration, Jesus, I declare these words, which I believe today in Psalm 91:2. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust, with great confidence and on whom I rely. As I align my faith, hope, and trust within all your promises, I will not grow weary. I will not be faint. I will walk and not grow tired, and I shall write these things on the doorpost of my house and on my gate. In Jesus' name, amen. I thank you for sharing your time with me, and I'll talk with you again soon. Bye.